Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. And today we've got a video about the museum's newest acquisition right here. This is a replica 3D printed 11-inch Dahlgren cannon. And behind me, you can see one of the ship's 16-inch gun barrels. This one was removed in 1954 to be re-rifled and then was kept in storage until the museum was able to acquire it in 2017 or 2018. What are we doing with the Dahlgren? In October 2025, the Navy is celebrating its 250th anniversary. And there's going to be a huge celebration, Navy 250, that's happening here in the Philadelphia Camden area. Now, during this celebration, we're going to be celebrating the history of the entire Navy. It's going to include ships like Olympia and Bakuna across the river, which represent much older wars, Battleship New Jersey that was in service from the 40s up to the 90s. And then there will be modern ships here as well that you're going to be able to come out and tour, including littoral combat ships and Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. The planning process for this started something like a half a decade ago. One of the things that the folks from Navy Marine Corps Homecoming 250 asked us here at the museum was if we could have any artifact at all talking about the Navy's 250-year history. Money was no object, we could get anything at all we wanted. What would that object be? And my immediate answer to that is an 11-inch Dahlgren gun. The 11-inch Dahlgren is famous because it is the type of gun that armed the very first turreted, armored, steam-powered warship, USS Monitor. It also armed a number of other monitors, and different types of Dahlgrens armed just about every single monitor that the US Navy built. Now, the monitors, of course, evolve over time into pre-dreadnought class battleships, then the dreadnoughts, the super dreadnoughts, and eventually the fast battleships like New Jersey, which is the last capital ship armored, steam-powered, turreted warship. So having that connection between the very first, those Civil War era ships, and the more modern ships like New Jersey is a great way of telling the whole 250-year history of the Navy. So there are a number of these guns which survive today. They're all already on display somewhere. We weren't going to take one from an existing museum where it's already getting visitation to bring out here for this event. But that's where Dr. Oleg Sapunkov comes in. Dr. Oleg is the guy who printed the full-sized 16-inch shell for the battleship. So Navy Marine Corps Homecoming 250 reached out to him and asked if he could make my dream come true and make a replica of what I think is one of the most critical objects of the Navy's 250-year history that ties into the Battleship New Jersey Museum. For obvious reasons, there aren't going to be any Civil War warships here, so there was nothing from that time period. There is discussion about getting older ships. There's a replica of the gunboat Philadelphia from the Revolutionary War. There's a replica of the brig Niagara from the War of 1812. So there's the potential of having those older style ships here, but there really wasn't any options for a Civil War era ship. The only ones still afloat that were in commission during the Civil War are Constellation and Constitution. And it's not worth endangering them to bring them up here for the 1-week Fleet Week type event that's being held. So getting something like this relating to the Civil War Navy and also to Battleship New Jersey's great-great-grandmother of a ship was a really cool thing. And Dr. Oleg being able to 3D print this in a couple of sections, I'm trying to remember, I think he said it took him 69 days of printing and 450 pounds of plastic filament to make this thing. Much like the 3D printed shell that he made us that we still use frequently on board the ship, he drove this out about a week ago, and so here we have it with a gun barrel, and you can see how this more archaic type of artillery evolves into what the battleship has. The other cool thing about this gun is we've actually got the piece that is the missing link between this type of gun and this one. So Dahlgrens are smoothbore guns, and notice this soda bottle shape that they have. They are cast in this shape. It has to have a built-up breech section like this, because where the combustion is actually happening, where the propellant is exploding to propel that projectile out the end of the barrel, that's where the most force is. Older styles of guns that aren't built up like this would have their breeches explode. But Dahlgren's soda bottle design, which you can very clearly see here, was so successful that a few of these guns were tested to destruction, like they kept putting larger and larger charges in there to see at what point they would be destroyed. But in service, none of these guns ever burst, which is a major accomplishment in the 19th century. But they're still kind of difficult and expensive to manufacture. So we'll look at that other piece, that missing link, here in a second. We've talked about it before on the channel. So I've written down some statistics here for the Dahlgren. Would have a 7-man crew when mounted in an ironclad turret. Has a length overall of 161 inches. The 11-inch would weigh about 8 tons. It fires a 133.5-pound exploding projectile or a 166-pound solid shot. The exploding projectile is like the high capacity. You're firing at an unarmored ship. You'd use that. The solid shot is your Civil War version of an armor-piercing shell. You happen to come across CSS Virginia marauding around, and that's what you're going to use. Uses a 20-pound powder charge, black powder, usually in a wool or flannel bag, and it's got a range of about 1.5 miles at 15 degrees elevation. I'm honestly not even sure if the monitor mounts could elevate that high, so probably a much shorter range than that. But let's look at the next improvement over this gun. This is the missing link between this and that, because we happen to have some here. So these are contemporaries of the Dahlgren. You can tell they're much smaller. These are 30-pound Parrott rifles. The difference between a soda bottle shaped Dahlgren gun designed by Dahlgren and a built up Parrott rifle designed by Parrott is the base ring here. You can cast a normal gun tube and then another tube like this, which you insert over the first one when it's hot. As it cools down, it'll contract. And now you've got that built up breech on here without having to mold this big cast thing. So these Parrott rifles are the newer way of doing it. And our 16-inch gun barrel is built up of a number of sleeves like these all put together. The other important thing about this, and the reason it needs this built up base, is because it is rifled. Rifled guns build up more pressure because the projectile is biting into the rifling of the gun. So it starts out moving much, much slower. It's not like just a regular round ball in a Dahlgren that the propellant hits it and it just starts to roll, essentially. This takes a little bit more force built up behind it to start to push out of the gun. Were pretty common in Army use. They were pretty common retrofitted to the older wooden sailing ships, but the monitors would have used typically a 150-pound Parrott rifle. This one's got a roughly 4-inch diameter. The 150-pounders were 8-inch diameter guns. And oftentimes the monitors would combine a 15-inch Dahlgren with a 8-inch Parrott rifle, one of each in each turret on the gun. So they've got one for long range and one for that heavy short range hitting power. It's kind of like the Civil War version of Constitution having long guns on her gun deck and heavy hitting short range carronades on her spar deck. So very similar theory behind it. If we need to do a short bombardment from long away, we've got the rifles that can do that. If we need to close in and just punch through, brute force through a Confederate ironclad sloped armor, and we got something for that too. So for my 8-inch Parrott rifles, they've got a crew of 8 guys compared to 7 for the Dahlgren that we have. A little bit shorter. They're within a half a ton of the same weight. They're about a half a ton heavier. The 150-pound exploding shell that they fire is less heavy than the solid shot, but heavier than the exploding shell of the 11-inch Dahlgren. They're using a 16-inch powder charge instead of 20 pounds. And they've got a range of 4 miles instead of just a mile and a half. And so you can see, as this technology is new and developing, why it makes sense to pair guns like those together. And now the Battleship has a complete set of one of the last types of turret-mounted smooth-bore guns, one of the first types of rifled guns, and of course one of our own gun barrels here. If you had to pick an artifact that helps tell the 250-year history of the Navy using the ship and the existing artifacts that we have, what would you pick? Would it be an 11-inch Dahlgren like I chose, or would it be something else? Let us know in the comment section down below. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals. For today's video and this artifact, we'd like to thank Dr. Oleg for the months of work it took designing and printing this new artifact for the museum. And we'd like to thank Navy Marine Corps Homecoming 250 for starting this project for us so that we could have this new object on display by October 9th, 2025, when Navy 250 is going to happen right here in the Camden, Philadelphia area. You can support us by donating at the link down below. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find out about the museum and our channel. Thanks for watching.